those games and was on the winning side. And that's Roy Carlisle there, who grew up here in Norcross, and he hit what is supposedly the longest measured home run in the history of baseball, 618 feet, when he was out in Oakland, California. But we have a lot of baseball teams here. And I'll put in a plug for Kate's working on a history extravaganza for this part of the Welcome Center in the future, and we're going to have a baseball room, I am told, so some of these people will be on display there. And we've got an arts heritage, sort of. This is Joel Chandler Harris. He got stuck here in Norcross one night in the 1880s. This was after his first Uncle Remus book had been published. And he was looking for other ideas, and while he was sitting there, a bunch of black laborers were also waiting for the train, and they started swapping stories, and a lot of that material went into his second book, so he has fond memories of Norcross. He wrote about that in one of his publications. And this is a scene from a cast party from a movie called Mutant that was filmed here in Norcross in the 1980s. And it was a story of not people getting electrified and changing, but there was a chemical plant supposedly here in whatever they call the town. It wasn't Norcross, but people would turn into zombies, basically. It was sort of a B horror film, pretty innocuous. And I've seen it. It's okay. But most of the exterior work was shot in the Norcross area. And Jeff O'Brien mentioned the vet's office down there. This is actually the vet, and some of the scenes were filmed in his office. This is Dr. Woods. He just retired sometime in the last year, so he's not there anymore. But this is a picture of him sort of examining one of these zombies in the movie.
By the way, QRPers have something called the Zombie Shuffle. It's on Halloween night, and we all get on. I mean, before or after, I forget when it is this year. Sponsored by the Arizona group, Scorpions, and the QRPers get on during the Zombie Shuffle for that evening, and we highly recommend it for all the QRPers that are here, or anybody else. Turn down to 5 watts and work the Zombie Shuffle.
Zombies seem to inspire people. I give tours down at Oakland Cemetery in Atlanta, and we have a big fall festival every year on the first Sunday in October. And 2 or 3 years ago, it also coincided with the day of the Atlanta Zombie Walk, where people get dressed up as zombies and parade around town. And we had hundreds of zombies come through. It was really an interesting experience. Well, speaking of election day, there was, in the 1992 campaign, one of the local businessmen noticed some guys in suits in downtown Norcross looking around one day and started talking to them. And it turned out they were an advance team for George Bush and his re-election. And they were planning a whistle-stop tour through Georgia, and he was going to slow down and wave. And after Carl Johnson told them about the town, they decided they would stop here and have a speech. So George Bush gave us a speech back in October of '92. And we've had various other politicians through as well over the years. And the last thing I want to say is these are 2 of our former residents, Ben and Grady Simpson, or Summer Hour. And they owned a large farm. Their family owned a large farm out along the Chattahoochee River where the Atlanta Athletic Club is now. Ben sold the family farm to the athletic club before. That's where the PGA was this year, I guess. Yeah. Well, Ben owned that farm, and his father and grandfather before him as well. But I was talking to a retired Methodist preacher several weeks ago who told me a story about another retired Methodist preacher he'd known years ago named Red Seegers. And Red Seegers had served up in Cumming and then later had moved down towards Augusta. And when he was in Cumming, he visited all the churches in the area, and so he knew the Summer Hours because they've got family up there as well. So he came back from Augusta one time, this is probably 1950 or so, and went down to visit Ben Summer Hour. And as he was leaving, Ben was moved by having the preacher come see him, and sort of right at the end, he said, well, I want to give you something here. You want to take one of the hogs back with you? And Reverend Seegers, in retrospect, perhaps to Ben's surprise, I agreed to take the hog. So what they did was take the back seat out of his car and sort of set up a ramp, and the hog was shuffled into the back seat. And Reverend Seegers drove off to go back to Augusta, and he said he looked in the rearview mirror and he saw Ben waving to him, and he said he might have made out some tears in his eyes that the guy actually took one of his prize hogs with him. But he got back to Augusta and he didn't exactly know what to do with his hog. So he unloaded it at the church in some kind of storage area that they had there. And he said he called up the janitor at the church and said, "You got a gun?" And the janitor said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, why don't you get over here right away? We got a varmint here at the church." So the janitor came over and said, "Reverend, that's a hog." So they slaughtered the hog, and the Reverend recalled that later that was some of the best ham he'd ever had. So that was courtesy of